Jim Hoskinson is the director of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby, and I wanted to start off asking you, Jim, what is the most what is the most challenging thing about directing The Late Show?
I think what's unique about our show is that we do what I sort of call breaking comedy. We do a lot of news-based humor. Obviously, we're very politically oriented. And a lot of times we talk about the news of the day, which means that we're writing very late in the day. The scripts change up until the last minute. We do a lot of live shows based on political events. We do, the American political conventions. We've done live shows based on the January 6th hearings. So these are the things where, we might, for those, we write up until 15 minutes before air and turn everything around and get it going. So there's the real challenge of digesting the information of the day, making it funny, getting the elements together and getting it on the air in a really short time.
Yeah, in recent years, you've really gone to utilizing these live episodes when there is a big event happening in the political landscape. Do you as a director have to shift gears much between a sort of regular episode and a live episode of the show?
We in the control room do the show as live. If Stephen wants to stop for whatever reason, he has that privilege. We don't. So as far as we're concerned, it's like in the same sense as like doing the local news. We don't stop. And if we do, that's a problem. So in that sense, no. And in another sense, it's almost kind of simpler in some ways because we're super focused on the event of the day. So if we're doing, say, January 6th hearing as a live show, we know that the monologue is going to be basically a lot of clips from that hearing. So the writers they write to the clips when they get a joke they like, they send that off to our tape people. So it actually sort of streamlines things, and it also focuses everybody on the clock, because in our normal day, we have some room to stretch. If we want to spend an extra 15 minutes and rewrite, that's something that Stephen and the writers have the luxury of doing, and we don't have that in a live show. So it actually isn't, for us, it's not really more stressful.
Do you have what for you is your favorite part of the show?
Well, the doing everything together is I enjoy that because we can't do anything. I mean, as the director, like I don't get to touch anything. I literally don't get to do anything. So I provide direction, but we have an enormous load of graphics and tapes throughout the day. Seeing those guys being able to pull that together and get that digested and ready to go. We're at this point, we're a well-oiled machine. And we also take pride in the fact that we do this kind of show because we're capable of doing this kind of show. I mean, our show is a really odd hybrid of news and humor, and we use many more elements than any other show I can think of. A local newscast or a national newscast uses many fewer graphics, and most of the other late night shows use many fewer elements. So our style of humor, we sort of dot our I's and cross our T's. So we have a lot of pictures, either graphic or video, to set up our points and make the points. And so to be able to digest that all and, get that ready and done and hopefully have it happen smoothly on air to support Stephen is something we take a lot of pride in.
You talk about like mixing the news and the comedy, but something else you incorporate in the show is music and musical sort of performances and directing those as well. And your Emmy nominated submitted episode has a musical number from Chance the Rapper that you shot. What was it like approaching that scene, and maybe even the musical scenes in general when you approach them?
I think we have a really nice system. We generally talk to the groups a few weeks in advance to get their ideas about what they're thinking about visually, what their technical needs are. So, the audio department has an idea of what kind of equipment to bring in and how complicated the setup's going to be. Chance the Rapper back in the early days of the Late Show, came to us, and we wound up covering the entire performance area in white fabric, and it was kind of otherworldly because it completely separated him from our normal set. Our set is, when we shoot on it, you can see a lot of our set, that you're on our set. This completely changed it. And so he's a very visual artist. And this, this song was based on a piece of artwork from a museum. So it had been mounted, so they shipped us the artwork. We had to mount that and then sort of create what looked like basically a museum installation. And the musicians, rather than being in the center of the performance area as we normally would have, were set up to the sides. So we had to sort of shoot in the round a little bit. But Chance was isolated by himself on a bench, on the platform. And it took a lot of back and forth about trying to physically get them in the space, and also to understand, what they wanted. For instance, he wanted the lyrics on the screen, and they were going to be center on the screen. Cameramen don't, so we couldn't center up Chance because the lyrics had to be in the center of the screen. And cameramen are used to shooting the subject in the middle of the screen. So it was everyone sort of had to reorient themselves to figure out how to make that work in a way that was really challenging.
Yeah. Wow. You talk about the sort of the space and how that, like how Chance's first one completely transformed that space. You do get to make this show on the Ed Sullivan Theatre, a place of tremendous television history from Ed Sullivan, Dave Letterman, and all that sort of stuff. What's it like filming in that space? Are there, like, what's maybe the best thing about it, but also is it challenging working around a sort of theatre type space?
Our previous studio for the Colbert Report was a black box. It's just basically 4 walls. So to be in an actual Broadway theater is really entertaining. I mean, it's a historic building back from the 20s. It's also quirky. It took us quite a while to work out the acoustics in the building. When Letterman had used a bunch of sound baffles up in the dome, in the top of the theater, and when we got into to transform it from the Letterman set to our set, we took away a bunch of baffles out there and revealed this sort of giant chandelier up at the top of the theater that had been covered up for decades. So we uncovered a lot of interesting stuff. So there's a lot of stuff to look at. It's interesting, but then again, it's not a very regular space either. So there's some quirks to it for sure.
Yeah. What's the biggest quirk to the space?
Well, aside from just the mechanics of the acoustics, I would say that our performance area in particular is quite narrow. It's very broad and deep, but it's not wide. So any shot that we take, especially in music, shoots through the performance area into home base area or the bandstand. So it can be very difficult sometimes to kind of limit, to make it look like a different space, which is what with the Chance performance, I think we were able to do. We made sure that the lights were dropped so that we couldn't really see to the sides where we were, focused heavily on a bright white object in the center of the screen, and tried to keep it really limited to, Chance in his performance area, the museum setup and the artwork. So that really kind of isolated him in a way I thought that worked pretty well.
Oh, yeah. Do you have oh, by the way, congratulations on your Emmy nomination. If I have counted correctly, it's your 17th Emmy nomination in 17 years.
Okay, I know it seems like a lot, whatever it is.
There's a margin of error on that count for me, but it's something like that. What have those Emmy nominations meant to you over the years, and especially such consistent recognition over 2 shows and more than a decade?
Well, I've just gotten, it's just an indication of how lucky I've been. I had been mostly in doing news when I started doing the Colbert Report. I didn't have any entertainment experience, which is I just sort of got dropped in and didn't realize how different it was. I got hired because we were trying to do the best fake news channel that we could do. And I had news experience. I'd worked at Fox News, for instance. I'd worked with Bill O'Reilly, who was kind of the model for Stephen's character. So it was kind of in retrospect, it seems like a very odd hire. But that said, I've been able to enjoy the entire run, and I'm riding Stephen's coattails. It really is. I've been associated with 2 great shows and a great bunch of people. So, again, I was just doing local news, getting up early in the morning. And so I count my blessings.
You say you worked with Bill Riley in news. What was the biggest difference going from working in that kind of environment to working with Stephen on a comedy show?
Well, because we're playing it for laughs. I mean, especially with the Colbert Report, when Stephen was a character, he could be as angry and unreasonable as he wanted to be comedically. He played it pretty straight, but so all the tension and angst of American politics and American news gets sort of flipped on its head. And I found that cooking and comedy are shows that are really great to work on because people like to laugh and people like to eat. So I've been able to do both. And local news, they don't look, it paid the bills for a long time, but this is much more fun to do.
Yeah. Stephen's talked in the past about how the old show was, he liked to think of it as the joy machine. That sort of, if it doesn't, it'll just churn you up if you don't find the joy in it.
Yes.
What, from both shows even, what has been the through line for you in terms of the joy?
For whatever reason, I really enjoy the fact that at the end of the day, I walk away with a show ready to go. So I don't think I'm the kind of person who could do a project where there's a 4-week or 6-week or 8-week horizon that I have to step the process through. The fact that I can go in, do a show, and then walk away and come back the next day and do another is really kind of great for me. It is a real challenge to get the show on the air. We have a limited time to do it. Everyone has to be on point, really focused. And that just makes the day go very quickly in a really satisfying way. So it works for my personality.
Yeah, and I guess doing a nightly show, you've got to roll to the next episode so quickly. It can be hard to sort of just maybe stop and appreciate one particular episode or one particular moment because you've got to work on the next 5 that are coming down the pipeline. But is there a moment or something from the show that you go back to and that you just have time to appreciate?
I do. Yeah, I mean, it's one show after another, but when I look back, I'm just so grateful that I had a solid career going, and then suddenly I got involved with Stephen and comedy, and this is just the idea that we would be together for one thing for 17 years. So a number of us have been with Stephen since the beginning of the Colbert Report in 2005. And, that doesn't happen in entertainment. I mean, people don't work, they don't work on projects that last this long. So, just the idea that we have a through line with the people that I work next to, people I work with, I'm just very grateful.
You've been working with Stephen for so long. What's sort of the most important thing you've learned from him?
I think the most important thing I learned was, especially as I was learning to do my job, as in entertainment versus news, if he's not going to blow his top, then it'd be pretty embarrassing for me to blow my top. So, he's a very level-headed character. He's very polite. He's very appreciative. So honestly, is when I'm trying to figure out how to do my job the best way, he honestly is a role model for that, because we have a really good crew and people are entitled to have good days and bad days just like I do. So, taking that all in stride and knowing that we're just going to roll along and again, we get a chance the next day. If I have a really bad day and walk away, it's a blank slate the next day, and I get a chance to be much better the next day. And that's huge for me. I mean, if we had to do this once a week, that'd be hard, because if we, have a bad show, stew on it for a week, I'm glad I don't have to do that.
Yeah. Is there sort of like as Stephen helped sort of instill is there sort of a culture of sort of like that sort of acceptance or forgiveness, or like sort of the fact that things can always be better and there's always another day to work on? Is that sort of like what the sort of culture of the show is, or is the culture something else? Like what is the culture of you guys? Like
I've worked at places that, and most all of us have worked at places that, where there's a lot of tension, there is a lot of, there's people are uptight and worried about making mistakes. And again, everyone makes mistakes, but for some reason, it's comedy. People are good at laughing things off. Stephen tells a story that basically he decided to do comedy. He had been sort of a straight actor, but he decided to do comedy when he was doing improv, and he was off stage with his friends watching somebody on stage have it, bomb terribly. And everyone backstage was just laughing and enjoying it, because what are you going to do? Some days are good, some days are bad. And that's when he thought that's something he could really embrace. So it's certainly not, we certainly have a very high standard of what we're trying to do. But we also accept that it all doesn't work out every time.
Mm. I've had the pleasure of, I got to go to one episode of the Colbert Report, and I've been to one episode of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. So I've got my sort of like own experiences as someone being in the audience there, and as someone who's been watching the shows. But for you, as someone who's worked on both, what is the thing you enjoy most about the new show, and what's the thing you miss most about the old show?
The old show was more intimate, and I think we all miss that. It was a startup, so we all sort of grew up together. It was a non-union shop, so everybody could pitch in. If somebody came up with some idea, 2 hours before air, everyone was allowed to pitch in. And I have memories of people, dropping whatever they were doing, trying to help us put some prop together or something like that. And we all, so it was all sort of, hey, let's put on a show kind of vibe. And it was really nice. And there was an intimacy with the audience, because the Colbert Nation, his character wanted the audience. There was a certain cult of personality about him that was really enjoyable. And this show, the Late Show, the scale of it is, it's a much bigger show. So, we have many more departments, and it's, we just don't, bump into each other as often as we used to on the old show. But the scale of the show, the ambition of it can be really satisfying. Like, for instance, the Chance performance, in the show that's nominated, we would never have been able to do anything quite that big on the old show. And, because it required a lot of people, working together to make it happen, the stage crew and the music department, coming together in a way that really turned out satisfying, in a way that, we had maybe smaller victories on the older show, and these are, bigger victories, I think, and it's enjoyable.
What's your favorite moment from The Late Show with Stephen Colbert?
Oh, interesting. It might have been, we came back in June, last June, when we got the audience back. It had been such the fact that we were able to do the show in COVID. I was sitting in my living room, people were scattered all over the East Coast, including Stephen down in South Carolina. The idea that we would have been able to do that show with everyone in their own house was, we wouldn't have done it 5 years prior. So that we were able to do that made us very proud, but it was super frustrating. So to actually get everybody back in the building together with an audience was, to me, that was a sign that we were, well, it was not to make too big a deal, but, it was sort of a return to normalcy for me that it was very moving.
One of the big victories that was worth celebrating.
Yeah. That was, because it was, It was really such a strange thing to do TV without a bunch of people in the room. I mean, that's I do the show surrounded by my people. I mean, it's it's our group, and suddenly we were all in our own living rooms. Very, very dislocating.
Yeah. Oh, Jim, I hope there's another victory in store for you at the Emmys this year. You got to win one of these years, right?
I don't know. People call me Susan Lucci at work. So what did it take her? 22 years or something like that?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you got another couple in you. We'll find out. And it'd be great to talk next year when you get nominated again.
Well, I look forward to it.
Okay, Jim, thanks so much for talking with us. All the best of luck for the Emmys. People watching this interview can go to goldderby.com to make your own award predictions. And Jim, again, all the best.
All right. Thanks, Matt.